All right, here we go. Welcome back to another week of Leadership Live with JJ Hardy and me, Chris Pinkowski. Uh, JJ, how you doing, man? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I'm excited. It's a good day. It's the end of the week. I get to do some stuff with the kids this weekend that I wouldn't normally do. So, I'm excited for this to be. I'm excited to do this, but I'm also excited for the day to be done so that I can do the cool stuff that I'm going to be doing this weekend.
Nice. Anything really cool that you're willing to share?
Yeah, I really enjoy. So once a month, I do a Veterans Coffee Connection, and it's at a place called the Liberty Center in Iowa City. And my son really enjoys going to that with me, and it's kind of cool to see all these crusty veterans like myself in the room, and him just kind of getting on with it. And I think part of it is he really likes the free donuts that show up over there too.
There you go.
But yeah, that's one of the things. And, just doing things with the family. We're probably going to go on a little hike and starting to warm up a little bit over here. So all the things that come along with that.
Nice. Yeah, I've got a busy weekend coming up. I've got wrestling tournament with my one son tomorrow. And honeydew items around the house. So
that's nonstop. I don't even mention those anymore because that's just a constant.
Yeah. That's kind of what the weekends are for almost.
Yes.
So JJ, let's get into it. We like to come in here, kind of come in hot off the top ropes. We got 30 minutes, bring some value. And the subject that we're talking about this week is emotional intelligence. It's something that you and I both know is a very important skill for leaders to have, right? You've got to have this, EQ. And I think that you and I were talking about this. It's something that not a lot of people necessarily understand. Some people see it as a buzzword, but let's get into this. And I know that you've been having some conversations around this. So I want to let you kick it off, but let's talk about emotional intelligence through the lens of leadership.
Okay. Well, since I'm kicking it off, I'll just go ahead and say what I think it means first, and then I'll kind of say what it means to me. So define it and say what it means to me.
Awesome.
Emotional intelligence is really understanding both who you are as a person and when your emotions are rising and falling, so that you understand how to clearly communicate. You understand how to mitigate conflict, and also keep a good situation better and keep a bad situation from becoming an even worse one.
Yes.
That's really the best way I can describe it. And for me, from an emotional standpoint, I pay attention to it the most, because when I'm happy, I'm really happy, and I can ramble on, or I can have great conversations or whatever. But when I'm getting upset, that's the hard part, right? Having strong emotional intelligence is having the ability to mitigate those extreme emotions, so that you remain relevant in everything you do and everything you say. And I was talking to you right before the call. It's that hot feeling that starts in your stomach and starts to rise up, and as we both agreed, it ends up, if you're not careful, just kind of exploding.
What do you do when you feel that happening?
So what I do, it depends. If I can close my eyes, take a deep breath, and keep moving forward, then I try my very best, because when it's already there, it can go up very fast. It's almost like a thermometer when it's 120 degrees outside. When you bring it in from inside to outside, it just goes all the way up to the top. But it's keeping that from happening. And if you can't, letting people know, hey, look, I gotta step away. I want to talk to you about this. but it's probably not a good time because I may not have anything very intelligent or very friendly to say about what's going on right now. And that's a hard thing. And people are going to look at you like you're crazy. But at the end of the day, if you do blow up, they're not going to just look at you like you're crazy. They're going to think you're doggone crazy. You're going to lose all your credibility.
I'm so happy that you bring up about recognizing the need to step away in order to provide the best answer, because a lot of times people think that us as leaders either have all the answers and we should be able to kind of rattle them off, or they think that we should be kind of unfazed by things. And when I look back in my career as a young idiot without emotional intelligence,
young idiot,
there were times that I was frustrated with not having the answer, but believing that I had to have the answer. And it came out in the wrong way. I ruffled the wrong feathers and I delivered the wrong message to the people that I was leading. Where in hindsight, if I had just said, hey, you know what? Let me get back to you. Give me 10 minutes. Let me give some thought to this. The outcomes would have been different. Guaranteed the outcomes would have been different. But without that baseline, and I think of emotional intelligence in kind of 4 quadrants. It's your self-awareness, right? And that's understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, things like that. It's your self-regulation, and it's knowing what you can do with the emotions that you're feeling, knowing which ones to kind of let up to the surface and which ones to like, all right, I need to keep a lid on that for right now because it's not going to be beneficial. It's that social awareness of, all right, the room feels tense and I can sense that, versus the room feels tense and I'm about to cannonball into it. And then it's kind of the relationship management of, all right, maintaining things with individuals as well as with a group of people. So that's kind of like the box of EQ. And I'm not an expert on emotional intelligence, but it's something that is so important from a leadership standpoint. I have taken the time to study it and learn it because I need to transfer that information to the people that I work with. But giving themselves the permission to step back and kind of reassess, disengage for a second, get their thoughts together. That 2-minute pause is going to be so much more beneficial in the long run than just bull in a china shop, go, go, go. And you can blow so many things up when you're just in the moment and not recognizing those points where you need to, like you said, the thermometer, like you feel it and it gets to right here. You should take a breath and step back and say, give me a minute.
Right.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
People think that that's seen as weakness or I don't know what I'm doing. No, that's strength. That's strength to not take the bait and keep going further and throw gas on the fire.
Take the bait and throw gas on. Oh my gosh, that is such a good way to say that. I want to put a plug in for the live streams that I do with Derek every week. So you talked about the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. Well, in the month of February, we're doing an emotional intelligence series. So this week we actually started with self-awareness, and next week we're doing self-regulation, and then empathy, and then social skills. And so it's funny that you brought those 4 things up specifically. I love it when good people come together and talk about things and we're all on the same sheet of music. It's just a wonderful thing. Anyway,
totally agree.
If you want to know more about that, ask Chris. He can reach out to me and I'll let you know when to tune into that. I'm not going to broadcast too much on his channel, but it's just good. All the great conversations I have with wonderful people, it's good. And Derek, who I talk with, he's not even a leadership coach. He's a therapist. And so we're right in the same vein. It's a good thing. But, you brought up one thing that was very important, and it was delivering the wrong message. So let's take this to another level. What if you're sitting at your desk or looking at your phone, checking your emails, right? You also have to have the emotional intelligence to, when you read something that's very upsetting, maybe you just got an email saying that this new initiative that you briefed up higher is just not going to happen, and people didn't like your ideas. The first thing you want to do is reply back to that and say, you doggone SOB, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And if you don't step back from that, you could have the same damaging effects as if you were face to face with that person.
Absolutely.
So that was a really good point. And I wanted to, this is the digital generation. I mean, we're talking remotely right now. So I wanted to make sure that was also brought up, because it's not just when you're face to face with other people. It can happen when you're working in a digital environment. In addition to that, if we are willing to look at somebody and say, you know what, I don't have the answer to that right now, but I'm going to go get it for you, then why wouldn't we do that same thing when we're starting to get upset? It's the same thing to look at them and say, you know what, I'm getting upset. I need to take a step back and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we come back, I still want to address this. It's the same thing. All you're doing is making sure that you're not going to verbal diarrhea and say something that comes to your mind that you're only going to say when you're upset, and it's not your true emotion. It's not your true message that you're trying to convey. Those are two very good points that you kind of brought up a little bit, but I wanted to add, a little bit of fuel to that, because those are also a couple situations and a couple mindset things that need to be broken with these things. And, the next thing I want to kind of bring up, and I'm going to ask you about it too. This is not brought up nearly enough. People tend to punish for having poor emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talks about it.
Yep.
So you have a team, especially if you're at director level or higher, and you might have multiple teams. This is a great topic to bring up, whether it's during an evaluation or maybe some professional development training or whatever, because this is one of those things that people don't like to talk about emotions.
Right.
So when you start talking about emotional intelligence, people will kind of sneer and snicker and do all those things. But when you start talking about these little things, whether they admit it or not, these are all things that happen to people on a regular basis, and it needs to be mitigated. And you can't mitigate a risk until you take a measure to do it.
That's right.
And all you have to do is talk about it. And I want to know what you think about that.
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And honestly, that is something that I've struggled with, because, you and I both talked about, the fact that we're Gen Xers, right? And Gen X was kind of raised to be like seen, not heard. We don't want to hear about the emotions. And you carry that into your adulthood, right? Into your career. And the younger generations have been taught to share their emotions and kind of be transparent about that. And I know for me, it was really tough early on in my career, when it was like, no, you're just supposed to bottle that stuff up and then go explode somewhere else. Yeah. And not even broach the subject of like, you know what? I'm upset about this right now, so let's take a pause. It was like, no, you just grin and bear it, grit your teeth, and move on. But there's so much power in that transparency, because those are the times that you can relate to people and people can relate to you, because like you said, everyone has the same thing going on. So when you as a leader feel comfortable enough to say to your people, you know what we're talking about right here, or the way this conversation is going, I don't think it's going in the right direction. So rather than us continuing to get frustrated, continuing to get upset, let's take a pause. Let's take 5 and come back. Because I guarantee you the other people that are part of that conversation want to take that 5 minutes, right? So many people, I think, are non-confrontational just by nature. Um, I happen to be someone who is comfortable with confrontation. It has been to my detriment. I have bitten the wrong person more than once because it's like, dude, I'm just going to go. But that's it. If I look back at my career as a leader, where I have grown most has been in that EQ world of knowing myself, knowing the situation I'm in, knowing how others, like, feeling the tension. If you're not kind of tuned into yourself, and what does Sun Tzu say? If you know yourself and not your enemy, then you're bound to lose. If you know your enemy but not yourself, you're bound to lose. If you know yourself and your enemy, then victory is yours.
Yeah.
So, just kind of taking that art of war approach to, you got to know yourself first before you can know and I don't want to call people that we lead our enemies, right? That was just kind of an example. But knowing yourself, knowing your counterpart, that's where victory is going to happen. But if you're not tuned in here to you are not going to be tuned in to the person on the other side of the screen, other side of the table, wherever it is. So that self-awareness piece is so important, but being able to verbalize it and act upon it, they have to go hand in hand.
Yep. You're right. And I know you're not a cynical person, so we're not calling employees an enemy or anything like that.
No.
But it's the same. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, life is still a chess game. And if you think if you're thinking in the realm that Sun Tzu did, it doesn't matter whether it is an enemy or, I mean, your spouse, your kids, your employees, your boss, your peers. It doesn't really matter. You
Right.
have to interact with everybody. And honestly speaking, you can tell when people aren't really in touch with who they are and they don't know themselves very well, because most things that they get involved with, they have difficulty making decision.
Mm-hmm.
They have difficulty even having a conversation surrounding things. But when people take regular steps to improve themselves and get to know who they are and always get better, they tend to approach everything with a different level of confidence. That's part of emotional intelligence.
It is.
And, actually one of the principles of leadership from the Army, and I don't bring these in very often, but, it's to know yourself and seek self-improvement. And this is part of it. If you understand that you have difficulty controlling your emotions, then it's time for you to have a conversation with somebody that you feel like is a rock, or somebody that you confide in so that you can get better in that.
Yep.
And if you're not getting better, if you're standing still, somebody said this in one of my live streams this week. If you're not constantly improving and you're standing still, you're dying.
Yeah.
So that's always something to consider. Always get better. Doesn't matter what it is.
No, that's right. I mean, my take on that is I want to be 1% better today than I was yesterday. I'm not looking to be a totally different person tomorrow. 1% every day, that compounds over time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you need. Like, you don't need to light the world on fire. 1% better today than I was yesterday, 1% better tomorrow, and you're going to see growth.
That could be as simple as knowing that when you're having a conversation with your spouse or maybe your boss, maybe apologizing instead of getting confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
1% better.
Yep.
Waking up in the morning and doing even a 10-minute workout when you haven't worked out in 6 months. That's 1% better.
That's right.
That is such an easy thing to do. And when it comes to emotional intelligence, if you know that's a problem, just saying, hey, look, I am constantly being told by my people and by you that I fly off the handle way too easily. What do you think I should do to get better at that? Just whether he tells you to go kick rocks or whatever, you just got 1% better because you got vulnerable.
Yes.
So that's important to understand too.
It is. And seeking that kind of input from other people, it can really open your eyes.
Yeah.
And it can share perspectives that you're not thinking about, because when we are kind of stuck in a behavioral pattern, it's hard for us to see through the weeds, right? So it can be hard for us to even stop and detach if we're so deep in that behavioral pattern, that seeking that input, like, hey, do you have one suggestion of what I could do better? I'm not asking for a blueprint to change my entire life, but one suggestion that I could do something better, I'd really appreciate it. That's huge.
Well, and let's talk about patterns, right? So you don't have to just speak with fellow managers about these things. Part of emotional intelligence is helping your employees understand where they stand as well.
Yep.
Understanding employee strengths and weaknesses, sometimes that could be that, they tend to hang in the background way too much, and we might need you here. And why isn't that happening? And so asking those questions, or maybe if somebody is, I've worked with a couple different people with one-on-one coaching where the reason they wanted coaching is because they tend to verbal diarrhea all the time. And, they're former veterans, which, it's not a big deal when you're around a bunch of other ground pounders or whatever the case may be. But another level of emotional intelligence is not even when you're getting upset. It's knowing the room, having tact, being able to, if you, it's the same thing as being around your kids. If you are cursing at work all the time because that's what everybody else is doing, that's how you can get your point across, that's how you get attention, and you're saying these certain things to make sure you're grabbing people and bringing them in so that they actually listen to what you're saying. And then you bring that home and you have a 2 or 3 year old and you control yourself most of the time, but then there's that one time you'll drop a shit or something like that. 2 or 3 days later, you're going to hear the tiniest little voice say something that you never want to hear from that tiniest little voice.
Yeah.
And you got to control what you're saying. Well, when these guys leave the military, and they're not allowed to talk like that anymore, because though the military is very professional, now you're in a different environment. You have to adjust fire there as well. And part of emotional intelligence is understanding, it's almost putting a filter from brain to mouth, so that when it comes out, you're not like thrown off to the side. You have a lot of value, so you don't want to ruin that by saying all kinds of stupid stuff.
Right. And it's beyond your words, right? It's also your actions, right? We talk about lead by example, and that's not just the words that come across our lips, but it's the way that we do things. It's the way that we, act when we don't think anyone else is even watching. It's the way that we're interacting, reading a room, like you said. But you and I both know that everything a leader does, the people that they lead see everything. You can't hide. So that's also where some people get in trouble, where they'll, it's the do as I say, not as I do. And, I want to talk about being transparent and open and honest and keeping our tempers in check. But then if they see you out in the parking lot because you're irritated and you're kicking your car. You're literally kicking rocks. Guess what? Your leadership capital diminishes every time you're acting in a way that's not consistent with what you're talking about.
Oh, you're right. I mean, if you tell somebody to go take out the company trash every day, but then you're not taking yours out and they walk in your office and it's a holy living mess. Yeah, people are watching you all the time. If you expect people to show up to work with brushed hair and clean clothes and the whole 9 yards, and then all of a sudden you slip up 2 or 3 days in a row, they're going to see that. You're right. You have to lead by example. Part of that example is by making sure that everything, emotional, physical, appearance wise, it doesn't matter. Conversationally, if you have an expectation of them, that you are also embodying everything that you're saying, because otherwise you're kind of a hypocrite, and they're gonna see right through that, and they're going to defy you without even really wanting to defy you. They're just doing it because they're like, why am I going to listen to this guy if he's asking us to do a bunch of stuff that he doesn't even do himself?
Yep. So something along those lines happened to me, and it was 7 years ago now. It was 2017. So I was leading a turnaround of a company. We had it was a kind of a casual dress code, but one of the things was no shorts, right? You can't wear shorts, which you're in an office environment, you shouldn't be wearing shorts.
No.
So we were moving houses. We were supposed to, I took off for a week to move into my new house. The weekend before I was supposed to be off, I found out from the guys who were building this house, we're going to be a week delayed. And I'm like, oh crap. I showed up in shorts on Monday morning at work because I needed to take the following week off. But all of my clothes were packed. Like, the house was packed up, man. We were getting ready to roll. We ended up staying in a hotel for a week because we sold our other house and my clothes were in a storage unit. And the first 2 days, I'm like showing up in shorts and a t-shirt. And I heard some rumblings of people. They're like, we're not allowed to wear shorts. This dude's the boss. He's showing up here in shorts and a t-shirt. And I had to call like a quick all hands and say, hey, everybody, everyone knew I was supposed to be on vacation this week because we're moving. My house got delayed. All of my clothes are in storage. So I'm going to be showing up in shorts this week. And, I'm sorry if I'm breaking the rules, but it's either that or I show up in no clothes. And what would you prefer? Right? I tried to take like a humorous spin on it. I either wear shorts or I wear no pants. Like, what do you want? And people were like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that you were moving and, all that stuff. But it wasn't on my mind because I'm thinking about, dude, I've got to figure out this week of work so that I can be off next week. Total schedule change. And I wasn't thinking about the example that I was showing until I heard these rumblings. And I was like, I need to nip this in the bud and kind of get it out there. But yeah, people see everything, and you've got to lead by example. That's part of emotional intelligence.
It is.
So some other people may have just been like, you know what? Screw those people. I'm wearing shorts all week. I don't need to justify why. But to me, I thought it was important to justify that because we had a dress code and I was breaking it.
That's right. And you could have just as easily said, hey guys, I screwed up this week. There's some stuff going on at home and I have to dress in shorts. So guess what? This is going to be Hawaii week or something like that.
Right.
People can show up in as long as it's appropriate, whatever you want. Yes.
Shorts for everybody.
Shorts for everybody. Yes. I've actually been places where that happened and you wondered, this is weird. Why are they all of a sudden come up? And I almost wonder if they had a Chris's storage situation while he's moving thing and maybe just turned it into a thing for everybody.
You never know.
It could happen. That's actually interesting. It makes me think, but that's really good, man. I know we're coming up on 30 minutes, but I just want to let, the whole audience know that, I'm a veteran. There are certain emotional things that I struggle with. So it's a really big deal for me to talk about that hot feeling that goes up because sometimes it literally goes from 0 to 60 in probably not even a quarter of a second. And please pay close attention to your veterans. If you see that happening, just have conversations with them about it and just give them permission to step out.
Mm-hmm.
People that react that quickly, typically that's a strength for every other time that you don't want them to blow up.
Right.
Because it's reacting. You know, we have to react. So especially for your veteran audience, give them permission to do that. And by the way, know that that's probably not a weakness for that specific individual. It's probably a strength, and you're going to want them next to your side when you have a huge initiative coming up, because they're probably going to kick the pants off of that along with whoever they have on their team.
That's right.
So that's all I got to say about that, but I know we're at 30 minutes now.
So we're going to move to wrap it up. We're a minute over, but we'll just kind of move things along. Any parting words from you, JJ, before I go into a wrap up?
Yeah, this is a very important topic. I challenge everybody that's listening to, in the next 7 to 14 days, have a conversation with your team about this. Have a conversation with your managers, with your directors, with whoever you have as your leaders under you, and just talk about this. I guarantee it's going to create some buzz. I know the very first time I did it, it did for them as well. I challenge you to do that. I think that with all of the stuff going on, especially with today's youth, and Chris, you said it earlier about how much open they are than people our age. I'll say probably 36-ish up to about, we'll keep on going, because the emotions get less and less and less and less and less the older you get. So, just know that it's good to have a conversation about this, because we all struggle with it, whether we acknowledge it or not. So I challenge you all, just have a conversation about it. It's going to bring you closer to your team. It's going to make you more credible, and you're going to learn something about all of them as well.
Yeah. And, I'm going to piggyback off of that in my wrap up. I would also challenge you over the next week or 2 weeks to really pay attention to your kind of inner dialogue, right? What's going on inside of your head, inside of your body when you're in certain situations. Start to identify those trigger points that kind of, create that rise in temperature. Start to, look at things almost from an outside perspective to get to know yourself better, so that you're able to have those conversations, right? You've got to be self-aware before you can have those conversations with others. So that's my challenge over the next 2 weeks to everybody. Just kind of get to know yourself a little better. Be honest, right? Honest with yourself in who you are. What are your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, all that good stuff. And what are the things that trigger you, good, bad, and indifferent? Start to understand what they are so that you know how to respond to them. And with that, like we always say, we love to keep this conversation moving. So if you've got comments, if you've got questions, drop them down into the comments section. JJ and I will answer them. We like to keep it interactive. If you found some value in today's live stream, like it, share it, tell other people about it. This is a very important topic, right? It's not just a leadership topic. It's a person topic, right? Emotional intelligence helps everybody, whether you're in a leadership position or not. So from me, from JJ, thank you all for joining us this week. And we will see you back here in 2 weeks with another hot topic on live leadership. Have an awesome weekend.